is a worst case blowout of the well that continues for 15 days. Is that correct? At the estimated amount, 15 days. Yeah. That we hope that we're able to get it under control. Then we're talking land-based, not Deepwater Horizon. So we got to start somewhere on it, and I believe that's 5,000 barrels a day, roughly, without going in there. It's roughly somewhere in there that they have to have the capabilities to respond to a spill of that size and have the capabilities to bring well control resources into play to try and close the well if it does not close by itself. And of course, then the smaller spills from the associated materials on the drill site, the fuels, lubrication, storage tanks, the glycol tanks, and they need to be able to respond to produced water. Produced water, as Kathy and others have said, does have a fraction of oil content in it, but it's salt water. It's not fresh water coming back out of these wells. That salt water needs to be addressed. There's a plan that needs to address saltwater contamination on vegetation or on the ground. And then there needs to be plans in place for transportation of any products to and from the site, whether that's supplies, if you will, if they're bringing in diesel or other fluids, or Carlisle's bringing in a flat full of drums, there needs to be capabilities and plans in place for that, as well as the oil that's leaving the site potentially in the future, or it has done already, a couple of trucks a day on the oil leaving the site. And that's a significant concern to many of us. I believe EPA and Fish and Game and others are coming down to work with you in the next couple of weeks.
Correct.
For some of the bridge crossings between here and Nikiski and some other sensitive areas that a team is going to be looking at. We do have response tactics for those areas already, but they're currently designed for oil coming into those systems, not oil from the road system going out. So there'll be some adjustment to those tactics.
Can I just jump in there, because I've got the perfect question for what you're talking about. It says Bluecrest will be trucking oil and fracking waste fluids up the road. How many trucks per day now and at the peak of production, and how many gallons per truck?
It's an incredibly important question to a lot of us, because we've had a significant problem elsewhere in the state. Without going to Bluecrest, they weren't involved. But currently, I believe there's approximately 20 trucks a day leaving Valdez for Prudhoe Bay. And so all along that Toke Highway, the Richardson Highway, and what have you, up the Dalton Highway, in the last couple of years, we've had significant problems with tanker trucks on road systems. So, Larry?
Okay, so I can answer these questions because they're different timing. Right now, we're running 2 to 3 trucks a day, and the Carlisle trucks are limited by road restrictions right now. I think they're running 300 to 350 barrels a day to Nikiski. The tanker trucks will hold more than that, but there are road restrictions in place now. We're running 2 to 3 trucks per day. To get to a peak production number, in which case we hope we'll be producing around 17,000 barrels a day. We'd be running at least 1 truck every 45 minutes to an hour out of the site if we were to do that. We are evaluating other methods of transporting oil.
You're already fracking.
No, this is from the wells that are already
This is crude oil.
producing.
Oh.
Crude oil. This is crude oil. So we are going to reevaluate. There's only 2 other options to transport oil. and that's via a vessel or pipeline. And once we achieve around a 10,000 barrel per day mark, we're going to strongly evaluate vessels in Cook Inlet or pipeline. 24 trucks per 24-hour period is a lot of traffic.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's 45 miles an hour.
I don't deny that. That's why I said we're going to evaluate this as we move along.
What's the weight of the truck?
Well, the weight's very
Yeah.
tightly regulated by DOT.
It's, the problem doesn't so much statewide, I'm talking, not talking from here to McKiskey, but statewide, the problem is not necessarily the trucks or the truck drivers, it's the other 80,000 people on the road that, or the road conditions themselves that are causing problems.
They don't sand anymore around here either.
Well, absolutely, and you know, the support that our transport industry is getting with budget cuts and other things like that is reducing. So it really takes good planning, good coordination, and good contracts, and good monitoring to make sure that this stuff happens safely.
Yeah, there was something else about frac fluids as well in that question. I can't remember.
I think it was basically about the frac fluids and the oil per day, what's the truck traffic going to look like, and then what are going to be the spill risks around the bridges. I mean, these are salmon streams, and our roads get fairly treacherous in the winter.
Absolutely. And we're well aware of that, and like you referred to earlier, we're working with both DOT and EPA. I have a meeting with EPA actually on Monday to discuss many things, and that includes. But we also work closely with CISPRI on tactics for all of this streams. I don't know the number of trucks for frac fluid to haul it off because I don't know for sure how long it takes for the flow back. Depending on the flow back period of time, it can take 2 to 3 to 4 weeks even, depending on how it goes. So I can't really answer that question definitively.
But either way, it would be reportable, or produced fluids just spilled, you know, due to an accident or
Absolutely.
something. That would absolutely be reportable to DEC and the national NRC there.
Yep.
And EPA and others, and would certainly be investigated by DOT as well for the cause of the incident, and DEC and EPA for, and possibly Fish and Game and others for
depending on the incident.
damage.
Okay, this is not a question, this is simply a statement. For those of you who are concerned that there are too few answers, too much speculation, too much we're evaluating, my name is Mary. I have my phone number on these cards. Please see me before you leave. We're beginning to lose people because they're getting a little fried with the details. Thank you.
Oh, Mary, thank you, and I believe we've spoken on the phone, and I believe you started a petition that's getting a lot of attention, and I appreciate that, and yes, and you're one of the people that I wanted to have here, because I think, for
I'm not impressed, sir.
I don't need you to be impressed, but what I would ask you to do, okay, thank you for
What I want to
coming.
say is, I want to thank everyone on the panel. I know this is a difficult crowd. There's some of us that feel very, very strongly. I feel very strongly, but thank you very much for presenting your information. However, far too much noise speculation from what I know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there is.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Let me say, and I spoke with Mary before, and I was quoted in the paper as saying that I wasn't so concerned with this fracking operation, and I was taken somewhat out of context, because what I told the reporter was, I think we should be keeping all our fossil fuels in the ground. We should be moving to a post-carbon economy yesterday. Hey, now listen, and I'm not doing this to disparage Blue Crest. These guys have been responsive. They're doing what our system is set up for them to do, okay?
Yeah.
And so I appreciate them being up here. They're here voluntarily. So I really appreciate that, and I'm not here bashing them. But that's how I feel. I've been working on oil and gas issues for 25 years. We have world-class renewable energy all around us, in our volcanoes, in our water.
Exactly.
It's a systemic change. That's why, saying fracking is the problem, I used the metaphor before, saying fracking is the problem, for me, I look at oil and gas as like driving a Subaru, and then when you throw fracking on top, it just becomes a Hummer. Okay, it's the same problem, it's just a little bit worse. It takes something that's bad and makes it a little bit worse, okay? But as Dr. Holkamp told us, we've been putting produced water and other crap back into the ground for decades in Cook Inlet. Okay? And nobody's been raising hell, but the word fracking has that meaning, and they've been very successful here. So the point here is to get information out and realize this is an element of a larger piece of the pie. If you believe that climate change and ocean acidification are serious issues,
Yes.
then we better address all these things. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. But I do want to get back into this, and I encourage anybody to talk to Mary about the things that she's doing here. But I'm going to jump into a water question, because there's two questions about Storisky Creek, and has there been any approval in taking the water or tearing it up? And then a related issue goes to the gravel pit issue, because as we know, if you pull water out of a gravel pit, it's going to be charged from the aquifer. Are there been any studies on taking that water and what's it going to do to surrounding aquifers?
I think I can answer those questions. So, I'm not sure I understand the question surrounding Storisky Creek. It is an off-limits area. We are required by regulation to stay a certain distance away from it, which we have, and we would never withdraw water from it or impact it in any way. And to help protect Storisky Creek, we put up a 14-foot tall berm around our pad so that nothing can escape this pad, given if there was an unfortunate spill of some sort. We firmly don't want to have any impact on Storisky Creek in any possible way. So now the gravel pit, I'm being a little bit vague about it because, one, we haven't settled on one. There are several. And to answer the question that you asked, we have not done studies on how it's being recharged. So to be, forthright, we have not got that far. We're just looking for surface water right now. That comes at a later date during what's called a temporary water use permit, which is also from the state, from DEC. And so that has to be looked at.
That's from DNR.
DNR, I'm sorry, yeah, DNR. So that process has not been achieved yet. But right now, we're just looking at potential sources of surface water. And gravel pits are one that are fairly benign as far as being fish bearing or anything of that nature. But the other concern is certainly groundwater and for surrounding wells. And we don't want to have that impact. So that study, to be forthright, no, we have not done that yet. We haven't even settled on one at all. But when we get to that stage, yes, we will. And if there's an impact or a potential impact to the neighbors, then we'll have to make the decision at that point to continue or to not. And in the cases that we've had so far to date, since we've been here, we have not acted on those that would impact any groundwater sources or neighbors. So I don't know if that...
I'm going to switch gears here because I've heard a number of comments about this, and it's not exactly fracking, and I know you're going to be having a community meeting coming up, but while we've got Kathy here, you made a comment about flaring, and a couple of comments here. Woodcrest has been flaring. Does it have a market for the natural gas? How is the air quality monitored? And then the second one is, if flaring is not permitted under normal conditions, what is the reason for the flaring going on right now at the Cosmopolitan site?
I can answer most of that, and Kathy might want to weigh in. We do have a market for the gas. We're waiting on approval for a sales gas meter, which is coming any day. We're in a commissioning process right now, so we have been flaring. Actually, it may seem like a lot of gas, but it is not very much gas when you look at how much gas is actually produced out of a well. That flare that's going on at the Hanson pad will end here very soon. It's gone on longer than we want because we could be selling the gas, and certainly longer than the state wants. The volumes itself are very small, around 300,000 cubic feet a day. I think we've been turning in. That's very small. It's very small. Yeah. usually gas is measured in millions of cubic feet. If we bring on our offshore gas field, which right now we're not doing any work on, we can produce 70 million cubic feet a day from that gas field, and that would help the natural gas supply in Cook Inlet and the Anchorage area probably. But we're nowhere near that. And we're not burning much in the flare, but the flare is still burning right now. It should end here very soon as we get approval to sell the gas.
Oh, yeah.
So, a couple of points about flaring. Statewide, North Dakota flares 40% of the gas that it produces, and because they don't have a market for it. In Alaska, we flare 0.8% of the gas that we produce. And I know that because every bit of it's reported to our agency every day. But as far as the inlet, seeing the flares that you see, the flares that you see in the inlet are usually they're pilot flares. If you have a bad event that you have to divert your gas from sales to flare or vent, if you don't have a little pilot light lit to flare the gas, you vent it, and that's worse. It's a safety hazard. It's worse for the environment. So you have to keep the pilot light lit, and it's, yes, compared to your stove, it's a big pilot light, but it has to be a big enough pilot light to handle the volumes that it would get in an emergency event. So to say that there are still flares in Cook Inlet, yes, there are, but on a normal basis, what you see are those big pilot lights. And occasionally there will be a plant upset where a piece of critical equipment fails and you have to divert your gas to the flare or the vent. I mean, if you're looking for aesthetics, we could just vent the gas and nobody would know, but that would be worse. So every now and then you'll see, instead of the normal size flare, you'll see a big flare, and that's an event. So yes, there is still flaring in Cook Inlet and throughout the state, but in general, it's the pilot lights, and when you see a bigger event, it's for good reason. Were there other questions that weren't answered on flaring? Bob?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know when I fly over the platforms, if that's a pilot light, you can cook a lot of food on that.
And with the 7.2 earthquake we had this winter, it was quite amazing out there.
Yes.
It was real amazing.
Did you get pictures?
That was probably an event that.
Yeah, it was a big
Quite the
event.
event.
And yes, Kathy is correct, but she's calling it an event. It's a process that may be a little bit easier. There was, after that 7.2 event, the oil and gas industry was doing an awful lot of systems checks. So they were ensuring pipeline integrity, they were ensuring wellbore integrity and stuff like that. And when you shut that in, you still have these pressures, you still have these gases coming up. Going through the process, in a lot of cases they had to go to the flare while these other systems were under inspection and careful monitoring. I live in Nikiski. I see this stuff all the time. I hear this stuff all the time when I'm 5 miles away from the plants there. I know when they start up, and that's the flaring system. To get the pressures right, to make sure the system integrity is right, they must do something with this rather than just, as Bob says, or maybe Kathy said it, just venting that off and not flaring it. It's much, much safer if they flare it, even though it's very visible and at times incredibly noisy.
I've got a couple questions here that go to Blue Crest's kind of business practices. Have you ever fracked before? If so, where? Is fracking a standard operating procedure for you? Why are you fracking now when the price is so low?
Yeah.
I'll stop there and leave it to Larry.
So the question could be answered, has Blue Crest ever fracked before? Blue Crest, the company, has not, but certainly the people on the team in Anchorage have. Both Elizabeth and Andrew have many years of experience fracking, once in Norway and on the North Slope. So there's a lot of experience, plus our drilling crew has also been here for over 30 years. They have a lot of experience with fracking. So to answer that question, Blue Crest as a company, no. This is their first project.
That's what I thought.
It is manned by an Alaska team in Anchorage. I myself have been here 29 years in the oil industry. It's a very experienced team that we have. We all live here. So, with the exception of our executive management, two of which live, well, actually they all live in Fort Worth. One of them is from Anchor Point. I don't know where the other two are from, but they all live in Texas. But the operations management team is in Anchorage.
Who makes those?
Great, thank you. Somebody put a question here, and it's about Hillcorp and looking for a qualified legal person to come help with that. I can provide some, there's some people we can point you to there. Hey, we get a lot of questions about that. There's been a lot of seismic testing around the area, as some of you know. There's another question about who is the regulatory body responsible for looking out for the health and well-being of our surrounding community. I mean, I think, from a public perspective, there's kind of this alphabet soup of agencies and everybody has their blinders on, there are certain jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. But is there anybody that's looking at, because some of the things, if you've looked at, we played the Josh Fox, forget the name, Gas Man. And, you see radical changes in places where you have this intense fracking in the shallow gas plays. I guess this is a question about who's looking at the changes socially and economically, human health-wise, to the community?
I would have to say Department of Health and Social Services for
They're looking at this?
No, not even.
as far as looking at things from a broader perspective, as he was talking about it, are they coming in and testing each individual person and monitoring the changes in your health and well-being over the years? No, but certainly as far as watching trends across the state and across the region, I would have to say it's DHS. Certainly DEC is watching pollution from petroleum or hazmat, air pollution, water pollution, water impacts, health and safety inspections of restaurants and things like that, as well as seafood and other things. There are many agencies, both state and federal, that are watching trends and watching out for the health and well-being of our communities. Do we see them all the time? Do they come in our neighborhoods? No. But are they actively watching for their trends and things like that? I should hope so. Because otherwise we're on our own, and if we don't have accurate and up-to-date information on some of these issues, we're just we have no idea what we're talking about. So.
Exactly.
How will Blue Crest compensate someone if the well water or the well is damaged? Will they put in a new well? So if you do pre-fracking and post-fracking monitoring and you find that there's been contamination, what will be Blue Crest's response?
After we make them clean it up.
That's actually a good question, and I don't even know how to answer that question because we haven't considered that it would happen, but it's a good question. Well, as was demonstrated earlier, it's nearly impossible for us to impact drinking water, but it's a good question. And we are going to monitor the wells. We already have monitored the baseline around there, and we'll have to after the frac. And if a problem is detected, then I guess, and I'm just speaking as a layman, I'm not an attorney, we would negotiate with the owner to apparently drill new well. I don't know how else to answer that question.
What's a well in Anchor Point, $5,000?
What's your lifestyle worth?
Well, what I'm saying, that's not enough. I don't think that's enough. I don't think that's the answer. If you find contaminants in your well, drilling a new well is not the answer.
We're losing all the water in the well.
I'm sorry?
Losing the
Losing all
water.
in the well because of
Wells go dry.
Oh,
There's
wells
a-
go dry or something
Oh,
like that.
also.
Okay. I thought, well, yeah. Then maybe another well would be adequate. But if it's a contaminated issue, $5,000 new well is not the answer.
If the water's contaminated, it's contaminated in that.
That's a completely different issue.
Charlie, were you going to add that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I need a microphone, I talk loud enough, but I can't speak for DNR, but there are, they do look out for water quantity and through the water rights, through their water rights. So if you apply for water rights for your well water, that's your legal right to that water, to the quantity of water.
Correct.
So if something happens, that would be what you would use for any litigation or discussion about what would need to be done to replace the quantity of that.
And I'm not well enough versed on the temporary water use permit stipulations, but I don't think we can just go in and drain a drinking water aquifer.
No.
So that's not going to happen. We wouldn't want it to happen, but we can't. It can't happen.
There's a question, as anyone done any studies that fracking will have to deficient sea life in Cook Inlet? Anyone want to take that?
Was it how it affects?
You're really close.
Has anyone done any studies of any potential impacts to seawater and sea life in Cook Inlet fish?
Fish running along, that's really close to the East Rip, right? Where a lot of the fish run for the, right there.
We're talking
You're
about
3.5 miles
fracking.
south.
For us to impact fish in Cook Inlet, I'm not even sure how that can happen. We have to have a mechanism for that to take place. Either a spill to the water or a 1.5 mile deep crack in the earth for the fluid to get to Cook Inlet. Otherwise, I don't see how that can happen. We have no way to contaminate the water of Cook Inlet by fracking.
But doesn't the fracturing cause like
A vibration.
vibration, or does that?
Certainly,
Sonar.
oil and gas activity, exploration activity in Cook Inlet is very closely monitored as far as seismic work and other things like that, dock installations because of vibrations and stuff. You're talking 1 or 2 time or very infrequent type events that have to go through a mile of bottom before they get to the fish there. Is it possible? Maybe, but is it measurable? I doubt it. And I don't think, maybe, did you do any studies in Norway on this type of thing?
Well, I mean, in Norway, it is very heavily regulated, but we have,
There's Norway requires you to put a lot of additional installations on the sea floor. They are hydrocarbon sensing installations for any kind of integrity issues or fracking, and that's a requirement. And there has not been anything reportable from fracking. And there's been, fracking operations in Norway, again, since the 60s.
But it sounds like you're not having those regulations here. They're more stringent in Norway.
I don't think so. I'm not going to comment on the regulations here, but I can just.
Because there isn't.
But the work that we have done is, I mean, these fracks are only supposed to propagate up a couple hundred feet. So a couple hundred feet is not a mile and a half. So it's the physics is makes it impossible, and there's no precedence. So.
Well, let me ask a question then, if I can.
Of course, Steve.
Your rough time schedule is November. And maybe I'm going out of bounds here, but would you consider this type of an issue if you were going to conduct fracking in, say, July?
Like putting sound monitors on the
Something,
C4?
yeah, some alteration of your process. November is a little bit different than July, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
If we were going to do a fracture if we were going to conduct a fracture in summertime, where we could get vessels out and potentially do a C4 sound study, we would certainly take a look at that. I mean, this is not new technology by any means. It's done all the time, and we have experience with that. So, barring any unforeseen, tremendous, unreasonable cost, but certainly we would look at that if it would satisfy that question. Sure.
I mean, I fished in the inlet for over 20 years, and I've never seen any oil rigs on the east side where a lot of the fish run for the east side fishery. And you're going to be right out in that east rip, and I'm wondering what's being.
We don't have anything. We don't have any plans to put anything out in the water right now.
Yeah, but you're planning on going out 3.5 miles, correct?
But that's a mile and a half below the surface. We're not putting anything out in the water.
it's coming from,
Horizontal, they'll go out 3 miles. Vertically,
Right,
they'll go down a mile and a half.
it's coming from the
That's what we're-
surface and
Makes sense.
from the current location and going like this
Right.
under the water.
Underwater.
6,000 feet.
And it loops back and goes up out the
No, it comes back out through the same straw that you've got. It starts here. Here's say this is the shoreline. It starts here, goes out, and all the fluids and everything come back up here. There's nothing that comes up here.
God, it's a
We already discussed that.
Yeah. We did have the PowerPoint up there, and we will be making that available so you can see that, but, again, this is where I think, and again, I'm not downplaying this stuff, but it's deep, it's far offshore, it's very dissimilar to a lot of the shallow shale plays that we've been seeing fracking have so much problem in the lower 48, so. But I am gonna try to get through these 3 questions here, and I'm gonna fire these at Kathy. First, we hired and appointed by Sean Parnell. Second, will water resources and water disposal be determined before the permit is approved? And where in the fracking process does the public have input?
Okay, I was appointed by Sean Parnell to finish an unexpired term after 4. Ask this one to you. Expected water cut after we've done the flow back. Initially, for the first couple of years, is going to be what we expect is less than 2%. So we're expecting trace water. We're not expecting to deal with any significant quantity of produced water. The second question was how we perforate your casing. If we don't use GEMS, we're going to run in with pre-drilled casing. So there'll be basically a ring of holes every 500 feet where we will inject the frac fluids.
Okay, we got that. We had a number of questions that go to trust. Should we trust Blue Crest, and I know Larry's going to be having another public meeting. When is that going to be, Larry? Do you know?
We settled on a date yet?
No,
We haven't settled on a date yet. Oh, it's in June.
Okay.
it's like the second or third week of June.
I think it's the second, we're
Yeah.
looking at the second week of June for the next town hall meeting, but the trust question is, of course, that's very difficult to answer this. But I will comment that for any of you that have attended any of the past town hall meetings, which we've been doing for almost 2 years now, I have brought up fracking. We've talked about fracking. So this conversation isn't new. It's been in my PowerPoint slides, and I've not tried to hide any of the facts. We intend to frack these wells. So I don't know if that lends any credence at all, but we have been very forthcoming.
Another common theme that's come out here, and there's probably about 6 questions here, and it's about, why are you fracking now? 1, there's a lot of gas escaping from the North Slope, and 2, fracking and oil and gas production are creating some damage to the planet. Shouldn't Blue Crest be getting into renewables? So 1 is capturing North Slope gas, and why isn't Blue Crest into renewables?
Or home or electric or something like that.
So I think I can answer the question regarding North Slope gas. We are not fracking to obtain gas in any fashion or form. We're fracking to increase our crude oil production.
Standard.
So it has nothing to do with gas production.
That's really
So,
Does it have anything to do with the agrium?
no, not at all. No. What was the second part of that question?
Climate change.
Oh, climate change and renewables.
Yes.
Okay, that's where we're probably, but it's good to be on the table. We are an oil company, so that is our source of income. I will say that we have taken some measures on our site to be as environmentally friendly, I guess, as we can and still operate. Every light on our pad is an LED light, and that is by design, and that was something I pushed for early, and it was not inexpensive. We're running microturbines on that site. We're not running diesel generator. We're running microturbines, which are extremely efficient. We hardly burn any gas through them, and they power everything out there. They have such a low emission rate, they don't even show up on the EPA tier system. We monitor everything out there very closely. We have to, but we do it also because it's the right thing to do. We're doing some things out there to try and be as friendly environmentally as we can. Keep in mind that we live here too. I've lived here almost 30 years. The last thing we want to do is damage the environment. We are here to produce oil, and that's my job, and most of our jobs are related to that. But that doesn't mean we want to do it irresponsibly. We want to do it responsibly and be as green as we can, but still produce oil. So, I don't know if that answered the question or not.
It's tough. I mean, producing oil and gas is contrary to fighting climate change and all
Yeah,
that.
it's
And I
not
appreciate your
green.
honesty. And like I said before, our system is set up, and Blue Crest is doing what is expected by our system.
Yeah.
So if we want change, you better change the system, and that's
Right.
frustratingly hard.
Yeah.
But I'm going to move on because I've got a couple other questions here for Brianna at NRDC. What does the NRDC see as Alaska's weakest link or biggest risk through the process you've heard about tonight? And also, there was another question before about Porter Ranch. So one about what you've learned tonight, what's our weakest link and our biggest risk, and then maybe talk about Porter Ranch and how they handled that incident there.
That's a good question, and I probably need to give it a little bit more thought. I'm not thoroughly familiar with all of Alaska's regulations. I've done a little bit of research into it, but I probably need to look into it more to figure out or to answer that question thoroughly. So I'm happy to put some stuff together and get back to Bob with a better answer on that. But some of the things we talked about that are common to all oil and gas operations, is the well being built right, are the fluids being handled properly. that sort of thing, but not knowing enough about what's happening in Alaska, I have to look into that a little bit more. The Porter Ranch situation was just a mess.
Where is it?
It was just outside of LA. There's a gas storage facility
Oh, that's the
there.
Alyssa
place.
Canyon.
Yeah, Lisa
I can
Canyon.
answer that.
Yeah. Basically what was happening there is they were allowing some extremely risky practices to occur. The well there was originally drilled in 1953 as an oil producing well. It was converted to a gas storage well in 1973 with basically no changes or upgrades to the well. That well is about 8,800 feet deep. It has a string of surface casing and a single string of production casing. Production casing was only cemented for about the bottom 2,000 feet, meaning there was a mile of casing without cement behind it, so corrosion happens over time. They were also allowing them to do a really risky practice, which was they had tubing installed on the well, set on a packer, but the tubing had flow ports in it. So basically they were allowing them to produce gas through both the tube, which is just a terrible practice. One of the main functions of the tubing is to protect the production casing. As Kathy was saying, the tubing could be more easily replaced, production casing not so much. So they're still doing the final root cause analysis, but what seems like happened is you probably had corrosion happening from both sides. You had corrosion happening on the outside of the production casing, you had corrosion happening on the inside of the production casing because of this crazy practice of allowing them to produce gas through the annulus and the tubing. And no cement, behind the production casing. And the problem, it's not the first well that's had, mechanical integrity problem like that, but the consequences of that mechanical integrity problem were spectacular and unusual, that they weren't able to stop that leak quicker. And they're still looking into, partly why that happened. But, you go through the well histories of the other 114 wells in this field, and it's, they all look about the same. There's a lot of vintages of wells, but you have a lot of them that are of that age. A lot of them were with known issues of leakage, particularly at something called a stage collar, which is something that they put in the casing so they can cement up higher. Like if you can't push cement all the way up the well because it's so deep, put in something called a stage collar so you can cement up a little bit higher. But those have a history of leakage in this field for going on for years and years and years, and the regulator there just never required them to do anything about it. So there was just kind of a regulatory failure on all levels, unfortunately, that they basically allowed those operators to regulate themselves, and that was basically the consequence of that, unfortunately.
Can I add something to that real quick?
Sure, please.
Not my topic, but I did a lot of research into the Youngstown, Ohio induced seismicity, and I'm sensing a common thread here. That was an improperly done well as well. They were targeting for injection a sandstone layer, but they drilled an extra 100 feet past that and completed the entire bottom of the well open hole, meaning no cement, no casing. They were basically allowing the fluids to have direct access to the faulted basement, and that's what allowed the earthquakes to occur. So there's a common thread I'm seeing, and it's problems happen when you don't properly do things or don't follow the strictest procedures for preventing something like this happening.
We've done it.
I think that's pretty much done. That regulations should be tight and controlled, and doing that is the best way to ensure that nothing bad happens. But
so one thing that my agency does when there's an opportunity to learn from some other incident. When the Macondo disaster occurred, we did a top-to-tail review of all of our regulations that could have come into play to prevent that disaster. When the Alyssa Canyon or Porter Ranch disaster occurred, we did the exact same thing. And although the California folks haven't published the root cause analysis in its entirety yet, they have, the Federal Energy Commission has, was it FERC, or one of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissions has formed a national task force to take that root cause analysis apart and apply it to all states' regulations and make sure that it can't happen again. And I requested and was allowed to be put onto that team to ensure that any learnings that they have, Alaska can benefit from. And so all I'm trying to say is that you just have to, sometimes shit happens, but when it does, you just jump in there and make sure that shit's not going to happen to you. And that's one of the things that my agency tries really hard to do.
So I see it's about 11:15. I want to give every panelist a shot to have some closing comments here. I've got a couple more questions, and we might have answered this, but there's a question about doing the math and figuring out the total number of gallons per day of fracking fluid that will be used, and how many gallons per day, the non-water constituents. Will that information be in the application to ARGCC?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great. And then there's a question about well monitoring. I think we talked about that before. How does Blue Crest Energy define success in Cook Inlet? How many wells there in the future? How long for exploration? What are your future fracking plans?
Yeah.
Can you give me the card so I can just go through it piece by piece?
Yeah.
How do we decide success? We are a oil and gas company, so success for us is having a profitable, successful development. How many wells will there be in the future? With the current modeling that we've done, we're looking somewhere less than 20 wells for the current development. If at some point in the future we do see economics for an offshore play, then that'll be pursued. That will be a separate project. We have no idea if that will move forward at this point. Exploration for this prospect is already done. As we're drilling a horizontal well and fracking it. That is a development well, and we will be putting that on production. So for this prospect, the exploration is already complete.
How long are you going to be there if you're cooking?
The field has the capability of producing for a very long time, more than 20 years.
Let me ask this question. There's a lot of debate in our legislature, and the House just passed the governor's modified bill, HB 247, now it's in the Senate about tax credits. If the Cook Inlet tax credits were eliminated tomorrow, what would that do to the Blue Crest business model?
I'm not the CFO, I can't answer that question.
No, you got an idea?
Could you repeat the question?
If the tax credits that exist today for oil and gas exploration and development went away tomorrow, what would that do to Blue Crest business plan?
I can talk a little bit about that. I've done the economic modeling. Every oil and gas company here considers the tax credits an upside.
Thank you.
So nobody in their right mind is going to go into an investment assuming that we're going to get that. So this project is economic without tax credits.
Say that again louder.
This project is economic without the tax credits.
Even with the price as low as it is?
Well, you asked about the tax credits. Not the oil price forecast that we use assumes the oil price is gradually going to go up over time with demand.
So a related question just came in, and how much money has Blue Crest received from the state of Alaska in the form of tax credits? There's not a time period, but say over the last 5 years.
I can answer that. To date, we've not received a single dime, but the state has made promises on the tax credit program in the past, and we expect to receive around $40 million. The return on that to the state of Alaska through royalty, not tax on oil, but through royalties, is about $120 million. So this is a return on investment. Not every tax credit that's spent has a return on investment. This is not an exploration project where we might drill a dry hole. This is a development project where there's a return on the investment. So I don't know if that help answer that.
That did, thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. I think miraculously I've got through most questions. Some were a little, I would say off-putting, so, but I'm just going to go down the line and start with Andrew and see if you have any closing comments.
I really don't have anything to add. I just want to say thank you for inviting us to be here tonight and for all of you to listen to what we have to say.
Yeah, so also thank you, Bob, for inviting me down here. And it's always a pleasure having these meetings in Homer. I think it's a very, very, very important topic to our communities. That not only do we attend these meetings, but we educate ourselves as to what is the threat going on around us, whether it's oil and gas development or it's just what's on the highways or in our water. It's our responsibility to educate ourselves and make sure that we know what's going on. So thanks for coming. Thanks for taking the time.
How many more meetings are there going to be?
I just want to say thank you, and having I am relatively new to Alaska, and having worked on fracs and operations around the world and many different places, Norway. I have to say I'm very impressed with the strict rules that are here to protect you and everyone else. And we have every intention on following those rules that are in place to protect you and communicate everything to you. And that's all I have to say.
Well, first, I want to correct, when I was talking about governors, I got them out of order. Murkowski appointed me first because he was there before Sean. So forgive me.
That's all right.
Forgive me. And second, yeah, but it was forget instead of forgive.
We forget that guy.
So, unless Barb Scalzi's in the audience, which I don't think she is, none of you here know me, but I take my job very seriously, and I think that what my agency does is very important. I always tell people in the agency, we're not important people, but the work we do is important. Hardly anybody knows we exist, which heightens our importance. People don't know that we're doing the work that we do, but trust me, or not, we take it very seriously. We keep the rules up to date, and if somebody breaks them, I personally make their life a living hell. If you don't believe me, ask some of the operators.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for coming, for having us here. I definitely give credit to Blue Cross for engaging with the community, because it's something that a lot of operators have been unwilling to do. But I mean, especially give credit to you guys for engaging. One of the things we were talking about before is that the community impacts, and the community impacts have been some of the least studied and least regulated parts of what happens. But it's a huge impact to communities when this comes in. So I just say kudos to you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep asking the hard questions, and if you don't like the answers you're getting, keep asking them. So good job. Thanks for being here.
How do we ask them if there's no forms?
Yeah, it was a great turnout. Thanks, Bob and Blue Crest for having me out here. From an earthquake perspective, I guess I'd close simply by saying that yes, there's a possibility for activities to generate an earthquake, but so far out of everything we've looked at worldwide, there hasn't been a case where an earthquake was larger than a magnitude 4-ish. So that's the hazard that Alaskans face will continue to be from natural seismicity. That's all I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to get across. I will be looking at this operation. The Alaska Earthquake Center has the capability to detect any magnitude 1 or larger earthquake in the entire region. So it's something that I'll personally be checking up on just to see what activities may or may not be expect anything to happen. but it's certainly something I'm going to keep up with. So if anyone has any outstanding questions, I would just tell people to go to the Alaska Earthquake Center Facebook page. I monitor that page, and if you have questions, post them. I'll answer. Otherwise, get your questions to Bob, and he'll relay them to me, and I'll try. Thank you.
And thank you. I know I'm at the end of the line here, and I haven't had a lot of input throughout this whole discussion. But what I will say is that the risks, in a similar context to what Stephen said about natural seismic hazards, as far as drinking water systems, there are existing potential risks and threats every day. Our septic systems, our fuel lines, and fuel storage. There's things that we should be dealing with at that level as well. And so just keep that in mind when we balance the risk. And as we saw with the depth differential of where our drinking water wells are versus where the fracking is going on, that there's quite a difference between those depths. And also the depth of drinking water wells probably isn't going to increase any much more, because there is a limitation of when you start to hit high chloride and brackish water at a certain depth. And so we're kind of limited to our depth for drinking water wells. And I'll just stop. And we do have routine monitoring for public drinking water systems where they are required to meet some monitoring for the Safe Drinking Water Act. And so I'll just stop there.
Great, thanks, Charlie. And thanks to everybody on the panel. I appreciate it. Again, these folks came down voluntarily. They came out to engage our community, especially Blue Crest. I agree with Brianna. You often don't see industry folks coming and doing this, and I think they go above and beyond. That said, like I said before, Cook Inlet Keeper, we would like to see us move beyond oil and gas. And at some point, we're going to have to get there. And I think with Alaska standing on the front lines of climate change, it's imperative that we do that. And so the last question that we got is, what role, if any, will Cook Inlet Keeper be playing in monitoring water quality, sea life, and things like that? I don't think we're going to have the money or the resources to do actually monitoring there. We'll look at paperwork, and we'll look at the submission state of GCC and other reports that are required to be submitted. But where our emphasis is going to be is, even though we're a small organization, we believe that we have to change the system that's creating the platform to encourage this type of development. And it's only then that we're going to be able to get to a sustainable economy where we're not regulated by foreign oil markets or the boom and bust of these unsustainable economies. So again, it's nothing against these guys. I like these guys. We're going to go out and have a beer. But I believe that I'm tired of playing whack-a-mole. I'm tired of saying there's a bad project here, there's a bad project here, and we're going to hit this one, we're going to hit this one. My head's getting flat. And I think there's a new way, and you might see the stickers back here that we have for the food help. We're working on food security at the local level. I believe that with the expansion of international trade and all the things that we've seen with that's leading to the collapse of the systems that we've known. And we need to bring things back closer to home. We need to bring our food back closer to home. We need to bring our energy back closer to home. We need to form tighter bonds in our community. So that's our vision for it. We'll continue to work with these guys and make sure the water quality and salmon habitat around Cook Inlet are protected. So with that, I thank you again for coming out tonight. I know this is a controversial issue, and I appreciate your engagement. If you have any questions about that, please get them to me. This group is going to reconvene for a teleconference after this. Do a download. If there's any questions you have that weren't answered, please get them to me. You can get them to me on email at bob@inletkeeper.org, or you can give me a call on my cell phone. My cell phone is on some papers, but it's 299-3277. And with that, I say thanks and good night.